children in the New Paltz schools. She's also vice president of the New Paltz School Board. She's active on the board's Legislative Action Committee and has been active in speaking out against and educating her community about the tax cap.
Thanks, Robin, and thanks for having me. First off, it's a whole new world living under this, the climate of the 2% tax cap. And I missed Eric, but I'm sure he articulately spoke about how it does not cap taxes. What I would like to say is that what it does do is perpetuate a regressive system of taxation. And I'm going to echo a couple things that people said. If you take a historical analysis of the state's investment in public local education, you really get to see a little bit more of the story about this continued disinvestment. This is a chart of, I'm sorry I don't have a big one, of the proportion of the New Paltz School District's budget that was funded by the state as opposed to local and federal dollars. To drive the point home, basically in 1988, 40% of our local school budget was from resources from the state, and this year it was 25%. So I think the data clearly shows that the state has continually disinvested from public education. And the problem, and the story that doesn't get told enough, is that it's about who we tax and how we tax. And as was just spoken of, the millionaire's tax, which literally would take a tax of millionaires' incomes from 7 or 8% down to 6%, results in $5 billion a year less in revenues. And to just put some perspective on that, millionaires who make over $1 million a year and take in about $19,000 a week, for them this would be about $400 a week. So we don't have an Albany that's willing to ask millionaires for $400 a week, and quite frankly, I find that disgusting. The middle and lower income classes are taking on the burden because the way we fund education is via property taxes. I would ask you all to explore our local assemblyman's two bills that look at both how we fund and how we deliver education. The first being Kevin Cahill's bill for funding the Equity in Education Act, which makes the case that we need to move from property to income tax. The second being we need to analyze how we deliver education in the 21st century and restructure how we do it, because we really haven't done it in a long time, and that's okay. We shouldn't be afraid of that. And over the short term, I would encourage you to look into the circuit breaker and advocate for that being a way for local taxpayers to not have to take the burden that the millionaires are no longer taking on. There was talk of the inequality between that the tax cap is going to initiate. Basically, I was at a tax cap conference at Mohawk on Monday, and the 2% tax cap for poor districts means that per pupil, approximately, they'll be able to increase their per pupil funding about $50, kind of looking at it from the other direction. But richer districts, the 2% is equated to about $500 per pupil. So the inequality that we already see is just going to be exacerbated by this. And of course, we're going to see a continued gap in outcomes as a result. Something that's part of the equation that I know is very salient in Kingston and certainly is a big deal in New Paltz is infrastructure and the lack of money to invest in infrastructure. We have just done across the region, across the state, building inventories, and there's a multitude of schools that the state deems in poor and critical conditions, but there's no money to get these schools updated for the 21st century. Because, again, it's all put down on the local taxpayer. And quite frankly, I don't blame them for not wanting to pay for it. The people who have should be paying for this investment in our future. We need to go back to New Deal-like thinking, and New Deal investment in infrastructure is good for education and good for jobs. The last thing that is part of the discourse in New York State is that everybody's leaving New York State. Well, in the New Paltz Central School District, we now have 50 more students in November 2011 than we had in November 2010. So not only are we restricted with the 2% tax cap, we now have to deliver education to 50 more students. And it's a myth in the Hudson Valley that across the board enrollment is declining. For the most part, in many districts, it's at least stable. So the Hudson Valley is still attractive. We want the Hudson Valley to still be attractive and still have really good public education. There's a lot of reasons why we're getting more kids in our schools, not the least of which is the economy, because people can't afford to send their kids to private schools anymore. And people from downstate, Long Island, New York City, are moving up here because really, quite frankly, for them, the relative cost of living is a lot lower. So we have to talk about the fact that there's this myth of people leaving and we have less children to serve. Bottom line is we have all these kids to educate, and this continued disinvestment from the state and lack of commitment from Omni in education is pretty much a recipe